Hey, this is Matt once again. Welcome back to another video. And this is a paid request from Peter, who wanted me to do a commentary on the original Beverly Hills Cop. And yeah, this is a bit of dark lighting. I figure movie watching, there's not much to see here, since it is more of a commentary anyway. So, yeah, if you have the film, have a pause at the beginning. If anyone wants to request pretty much any type of videos, whether it be commentaries, topics, reviews, re-reviews, a list, a randomness, a news, an article, what have you, reactions, what have you, feel free to send them either directly to my PayPal or join my Patreon. Both links are down below in the info box. So let's get started. 3, 2, 1, pressing play. Paramount, back when they were worth a spit, when they were not a pair of pricks, Paramount had a big deal with Eddie Murphy. Most of the films of the 80s to early 90s was Eddie Murphy with Paramount. Like, that Eddie Murphy did was with Paramount. Don Simpson, who passed away, may rest in peace. Simpson and Bruckheimer produced a lot of big hits, even going to the 90s, that Jared Bruckheimer himself. Martin Brest, who career pretty much died with Geely. Geely pretty much killed his career. He was the original director of War Games until he got fired, and then they got John Badham. Beverly Hills Cop, classic. One of Eddie Murphy's best films. As we have the assortment of cars in Detroit. Lisa Elbacher from Leviathan, and she was originally Steven Berkoff, who would be in Rambo First Blood Part 2 after this, as the main villain. Judge Reinhold, Fast Times at Ridgemont High, among others. Ronnie Cox, who would be in RoboCop and Total Recall. John Ashton, who was in Midnight Run. James Russo. Paul Reiser, who would be a couple years later in Aliens. Of course, you have a great song, The Heat Is On. Very solid soundtrack. As is the sequel. I think the sequel, Beverly Hills Cop 2, is excellent. Very worthy sequel, directed by Tony Scott. Harold Faltermeyer, one of the great composers, would go on to compose a variety of films. I believe he composed the score to Fletch, Tango and Cash. He would be in my top 10 favorite composers, Harold Faltermeyer. Of course, the Axel F theme, which you'll hear later, is iconic now. I know that's a strong word, but so many films have featured it, parodied it. I mean, the XOF theme was in that America, the motion picture that was on Netflix that I reviewed a few weeks ago. I know The Simpsons parodied it, like tons of stuff. And Don Simpson and Jerry Bruckheimer, they had a series of films either together or when Don Simpson passed away, Bruckheimer by himself, whether it be Bad Boys, Con Air, The Rock, Crimson Tide. This is Eddie Murphy doing the deal. When Eddie Murphy had that fire, that energy, not worried about offending someone, just worried about being funny. Now, I mean, you guys have seen Beverly Hills Cop, so I don't need to explain what's on the screen. Eddie Murphy got a star on Saturday Night Live, and I think he was the youngest cast member on Saturday Night Live. I wish there was I don't know if it's out there. If there is a season set that has all of his stuff on it, like the seasons he were on, I know they were releasing Saturday Night Live DVDs for a bit, but then apparently because of low sales they stopped it. But it would be nice, like, even if there was just a clutch of every single skit Eddie Murphy was a part of, it'd be nice to watch that. Because he did a character named Gumby, he did Buckwheat, he did a take on Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, and apparently around the time he was one of the only people keeping that show afloat. And after a bit, got into the movie industry. 48 Hours. 48 Hours he did. He was very, very young. 48 Hours at one point, I believe, was going to be The French Connection 3 with Gene Hackman and Richard Pryor. They got turned to 48 Hours, and they got Eddie Murphy, who just blew up after that. He's hilarious. 48 Hours a Day, one of his favorites. My ultimate favorite one, personal favorite, is The Golden Child. I love that film to death. I could quote that movie all the time. My sweet brother Numsy. Yeah, I'm gonna pow. Go pow his ass when I find him. Go pow your ass when I find you. You hear me? I'm gonna roll your ass till it bleeds. Another good song as we get into our first action sequence. Which is interesting because you have an action sequence with your hero where he's a passenger, which is not typical. Usually your first action sequence in an action film is the hero, either the bad guy doing something bad, or it's the hero shooting the bad guy, chasing the bad guy, fighting the bad guy to ordain his dominance, his presence, how much of a badass he is. Nope, it's just this guy on a lucky ride. But yeah, 48 Hours he blew up, and then that's when you had Trading Places that was a hit. And Paramount knew this guy was a cash cow. That's why, what Best Defense, this Dudley Moore film that they made the film, it tested poorly, no one liked it for good reason. They said, well, shit, this guy Eddie Murphy's really funny. Let's film a couple scenes with him, plug that into the movie, and he'll be labeled special guest star, which, how many times does a movie feature that moniker? A guy who's special guest star. They paid him a shit ton of money. The film bombed anyway, but Eddie Murphy is like the only decent thing about it. And he's in a total of maybe 10-15 minutes, if that. I'm like, just make the movie about him in a tank lost in the fucking desert during the war. That'd be a better movie than the rest of Best Defense. And then you had this film. And this definitely blew him up. It was one of his biggest hits. And after this, he did The Golden Child, which I love. And it made money. It made $80 million, but Paramount felt that was disappointment, underwhelming, because this made well over 100 million. Maybe like 200 million. I mean, it was a shitload. And so, I mean, again, The Golden Child was a hit. It made money. It was in the top 10 biggest hits of 1986. But it was still labeled a disappointment, and not many people liked the film, but I love The Golden Child. I love the everyman quality Eddie Murphy portrays in that. I love that it's Eddie Murphy with mysticism and supernatural, and he's reacting like a normal person. I think that's the appeal of it for me, is the way he reacts is how I would react. Nothing wrong with my Yang. And it showed that he could do it without cursing. I love Eddie Murphy cursing. But if people go, oh, he only needs curse words. No, Golden Child shows that he can do that without cursing. And it's not the cursing, it's his talent, his energy, his persona. I know Roger Ebert is one of the few that gave Golden Child a positive review, and he mentioned stuff of that nature. And of course, his laugh. And then he had Beverly Hills Cop 2, great sequel, which was a hit. You had Coming to America. Then get into the 90s is when the hits started disappearing. Another 48 Hours didn't do the best. I don't know if it was a flop, but it didn't do the best. Not as much as Paramount wanted. The Distinguished Gentleman, which I do like, that didn't do well. He tried to go back to the well with Beverly Hills Cop 3. That was a mistake, and that was a piece of shit movie, in my opinion. That didn't do well. That was a bomb. Deservedly so. Boomerang, I think did alright. Not a bad film. But this is when like Eddie Murphy really wanted to get out of Paramount's. I'm sure Paramount was like, fine, you're not producing the hits that we want, so leave. And Eddie Murphy, sometimes he was phoning it in. Like Beverly Hills Cop 3, he was phoning it in. He was trying to be a different character, not Axel Foley. That's one of the big mistakes. I gotta stop it for Inspector Todd. It's a fucking Foley in here. Now, apparently this guy was a real cop. Like, he was the real deal. So that's why he has a certain reality to him. What's your fucking side of the story? I'm not taking more of this shit from you. You damn right, wise ass. The mayor called the chief called the deputy chief just chewed my ass out. You see I don't have any bit of it left, don't you? But yeah, I forget the actor's name, but Inspector Todd. Apparently this is a guy who's a real cop, and I don't know why they killed him off in part 3. There's a lot of questions about part 3 as to why they did this. Why did they make this movie? Why did they have this idea about fucking amusement park? Why did they make it? I think it is rated R, but I keep thinking it's PG-13. Because it feels like PG-13. And of course I should mention that's Paul Reiser who's with them, who's sort of a weasel, who's trying to talk to Axel, but he's like, I don't want to get in trouble. And he has a bit role in Beverly Hills Cop 2, where he wrecks the car off camera. But yeah, in the 90s, his films were not... I mean, he had The Night Professor, that was a hit. Which to me, I know a lot of people like The Night Professor, but for me, I'm like, this is a movie with a bunch of fat jokes, a bunch of fart jokes, a bunch of crappy special effects, in my opinion. And I don't think it's that funny. Yes, it's Eddie Murphy trying to do something different, but to me, that's not playing to his strengths. I know he doesn't want to be pigeonholed at just doing this type of character, I understand, but this is when he's strongest. I think a lot of people would agree he's strongest when he's playing 40 Hours, Beverly Hills Cop, these kind of characters. I'm fine with him trying to do different roles. Doesn't mean they're always going to be successful, at least in my opinion. And The Night Professor, I've never been into those movies. Never have. Norbit, I hate. When I did my review, there's a lot of people that got mad at me because I hated Norbit because they love Norbit. I'm like, whatever. I don't like Norbit. I think it's one of his worst films, in my opinion. I think it's totally unfunny. I don't care about him doing 18 fucking characters. There's James Russo. Which funny enough, I just saw him recently in a found footage vampire film. I forget the name of it, but it was John Hurd's last movie. John Hurd from Home Alone and Chud. And James Russo was in it a little bit as like the owner of a TV station. He appears in a couple scenes, including the scene at the end. I mean, it wasn't the worst film. It's a flawed film. It's like, oh, it's cool to see James Russo in there. Wearing sort of a Magnum P.I. t-shirt. But yeah, as the 90s went on, there's some films of his I love, like Metro. I love Metro. Metro is severely underrated. But that's a summer blockbuster that they pushed out in January for some fucking reason. January. And you can't have a hit in January. Bad Boys for Life showed that. That was in January year or so ago, and that was a hit. But back then, maybe not so much. But Metro is one of Eddie Murphy's most underrated. And that's when he started doing kids films. And the kids films, he kept doing it because those were the ones that were hits. Night Professor 1 and 2, Dr. Dolittle 1 and 2. You know, of course, voice of Donkey is Shrek in the Shrek movies. Those were the biggest hits. That's why he kept doing them. And the films he was doing, like Metro, they were bombs. So even Showtime I liked, and that was a bomb. So career-wise, if that's what the mass general audience wanted to see, I just see why career-wise he went in that direction, but and Dolomite Is My Name I loved, but then he comes out with Coming to America 2, and which is one of Eddie's worst films. If I did a top 5 worst Eddie Murphy movies, Coming to America 2, I would rather watch Best Defense than Coming to America 2, because at least Eddie Murphy is funny in Best Defense. The rest of the movie sucks. Nothing's funny in Coming to America 2. In fact, it's ghastly. Eddie Murphy gets drugged and raped, and he gets spiked. His drink gets spiked. He gets raped, and that's supposed to be funny. I'm like, imagine if that was turned around. Imagine if Eddie Murphy did that to a girl and then expect us to laugh. There would be riots in the fucking street. But hey, if a girl does it to a guy, it's okay. It's funny. You know, Wonder Woman did it in '84. You know, fuck. But yeah, I do like Eddie Murphy. I love his stand-up, Raw, Delirious. I would say I like Raw more, but I like Delirious. Again, they should do a thing like Saturday Night Live. Here's all the skits with Eddie Murphy, boom, 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 in a box set. Stuff like that. Same with like Chris Farley. I think that'd be pretty cool. But, because this is when his buddy's going to get killed. And you have, I believe, one of them is Jonathan Banks as the sort of hitman working for Steven Berkoff. Yeah, I believe his name is Jonathan Banks right there on the right now with the darker hair. Guess his name is Zach. Jonathan Banks, now he's on the left with the tie. He was on the TV show, I believe it's called Wise Guy, back in the day. And he's been in a couple stuff. I believe he was in 48 Hours. He was with Nick Nolte at the beginning, and then told Nick Nolte not to give up his gun. And he's worked as a bad guy in quite a few films in the 80s to 90s. I believe he was in the Liam Neeson film with the commuter. And I think he's in this film called RSVP. I believe that was him. And he's popped up from time to time. I believe he was on the TV show Breaking Bad, I believe. Or it might have been another TV show. But I guess if you're talking about the original idea for Beverly Hills Cop, that originally they wanted Mickey Rourke. Yeah, originally it was going to be Mickey Rourke as the star, and things didn't work out. Apparently, like, they had a pay-or-play deal or something. Some time went off to do another project, and then they were thinking of Eddie Murphy, but someone else got brought in, Sylvester Stallone. And like, okay, Sylvester Stallone, big star, and Stallone, like he does, he rewrote the script. He does that for almost every project he's done. He rewrites the scripts, for better or for worse, honestly. And he changed it where it was still in Detroit, but instead of Axel Foley, it was Axel Cobretti, aka the Motor City Cobra. He dialed down the humor. He amped up the action. Like, big budget action. I think he was in a Ferrari or something, and I don't know if he was chasing, was it a train or a plane, or I can't remember all the details. And a lot of the other supporting cast were brought in when it was a Stallone film. Like, that's why they brought in Steven Berkoff. That's why they brought in Lisa Albacher, was supposed to be the love interest of Stallone. And in a weird way, that was for the benefit, because this is not cast as a comedy. This is cast as an action film, but it's very, very funny. And because nothing about it, like, you look at the other cast members, it doesn't seem like, hey, we're doing a comedy. We got, Dan Aykroyd as Billy Rosewood, and we got Chevy Chase as as Taggart. And so apparently they said the budget's getting too big. This is not the film we want to do. Stallone says, okay, can I take some of these ideas? Went ahead and did Cobra, which, funny enough, came out the same year as The Golden Child. Another film that made a bit of money but was deemed underwhelming, disappointing at the box office, was not well liked. It's another film I love. It's another one of my favorites. That's why 1986 might be my favorite year for movies. Because 1986 has The Golden Child, my favorite Eddie Murphy film, my favorite comedy. Cobra, one of my favorite Stallone films, one of my favorite action films. Aliens, one of my favorite films, period. And you had, I think Maximum Overdrive, and I think Jumpin' Jack Flash, and Big Trouble in Little China. It's a damn good year for movies. By the way, back to this. Another good song. Blonde lady hitting on him. But I don't know if she was being a bitch or not. She's hitting on him, flirting on him, and then he's like, eh. Maybe she's racist, I don't know. She don't want the black foot long dick. The bitch. There's that much for bags, man. There's like a little knapsack. I mean, you definitely have that fish out of water quality to it. That's why I always thought if you're going to do Beverly Hills Cop 3, I think what would be better would be to bring back that fish out of water character quality, but this time it's, let's see Axel Foley on his home turf of Detroit, and have it be where John Ashton and Judge Reinhold are in Detroit with Axel Foley, and do the reverse, where now they're helping Axel in Detroit. And so it's Axel knowing the places, knowing what to do, and these other two guys have to deal with how different Detroit is and how more rough and tumble the area is. I mean, you still have two Beverly Hills cops, only that, I don't know, to me that would be a lot more interesting, different than a fucking amusement park that you can't do anything with anyway. Sadly, this would probably work today if someone did this fucking speech to a hotel to save themselves from the PC police. They'd be like, okay. Of course, nowadays you cannot say the N-word in a movie. It's like, well, they're not saying it to be malicious. They're saying it because it's a word, like any other word. But what? But yeah, Sylvester Stallone left, did Cobra, or used the ideas to eventually do Cobra. Not right away, because this was '84. After this, Stallone did Rambo 2 and Rocky 4. That was '85, which was Stallone's biggest year. You just say to this day it was his biggest year, because those two films were box office phenomenons. It's funny, like Axel Foley's clothes is the clothes that actually fit in today's age. Like, you look at all the clothes everybody else is having, and you look at the way Eddie Murphy looks, you can see a guy today looking exactly like this. Like, they're not dated, as they call it, with the way Eddie Murphy is dressed, which is interesting. And yeah, this is the time where Eddie Murphy just had so much fire and energy, and then I think with a lot of the that man at the end looks like Pee Wee Herman. We have Bronson Pinchot, who would become famous for the TV show Perfect Strangers, as Sage, who worked fine in here as this weird little character. You did not need him coming back for fucking Beverly Hills Cop 3. And this, again, this is probably one of two roles Bronson Pinchot's known for. This one, and like I said, the TV show Perfect Strangers. Because he's done stuff since then, but it's hard for me to even think of it. I mean, I think they try to make him a star for 10 minutes. You had that one with Second Sight. That was a complete bomb. I guess the way I put it between the first one and the second film, I think the first one is more my favorite because it's to see the beginning, to see you, the whole motif of everyone meeting and trying to get to know each other, and I think it's the funnier of the two. I think part two is the better action film, and this is the better comedy. That's the way I put it. Part two is still very funny. Don't get me wrong, part two is still very funny. But yeah, I think this is the better comedy, and part two is the better action film. So, but it's tough. I mean, I don't know. The more I think about it, maybe it would be part two. I don't know. I go between part one and part two. It's hard to choose between which is my favorite. You know, the more I think about it. Still, they're both great movies. And you know, there was a special edition DVD of the three films. I mean, they had a little bit of features, but I mean, could have been a lot more. But at least the first one, you had a little bit from Judge Reinhold, John Ashton, Lisa Elbacher, Ronnie Cox. But, so there is that. It's better than what some movies have gotten, especially Eddie Murphy's filmography. Like, there's nothing for 48 hours. I know there's a Blu-ray coming out 48 hours, but maybe there's a little bit of Walter Hill, but it doesn't seem like much of anything else. And 48 hours deserves a lot more. Another 48 hours. Let's see that full uncut version, which we'll never see. I use that Axel F theme. And we're going to see Steven Berkoff as Victor Maitland, our bad guy, who, like I said, would be the bad guy. And funny enough, in Stallone's next film, Rambo First Blood Part 2. So I have to think he got that job because of this movie. Like, Stallone must have seen something either with this guy, or he's like, you know what, I like this guy. I want him for my Rambo movie. Well, I think if they had originally went with Eddie Murphy from the beginning, for some reason I don't see these actors being cast, because it would be like Eddie Murphy's comedies, so let's cast, even for the villains, something comedic or something, I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. But the 80s were such a big boom for action films. I mean, you could lose count how many great action movies came out at that time because of the material world, because of the world of access, and people wanted, crazier dialogue, funnier one-liners, bigger action, bigger biceps, bigger explosions, crazier car chases. Kind of like with horror films. We wanted bloodier effects and crazier monsters and more imaginative special effects, and it was like we want to prove this almost like machismo thing of I want to one up you. I want to be better than you. Competition. I mean, even with comedians, I'm sure it's like, no, I want to make a funnier movie than you. No, I want to make a funnier movie than you. Same with action, like Arnold and Sly, their rivalry, and I'm sure even Van Damme and Steven Seagal had a rivalry, and that was for the better. Now it's everyone, let's kiss our ass, sing Kumbaya fucking ya, and be complacent. We don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. Hey, it's okay. I'm styled. This is one of the better parts. Of course, they arrest the black man. I had to throw out a fucking window. Of course, these Beverly Hills Cop, they're all, blonde guys. Disturbing the peace. I got thrown out of a window. What's the fucking charge for getting pushed out of a moving car, huh? Jaywalking? Again, it has because of his first time, that ultimate, fish out of water quality that you can't recapture that for the sequel because he's been there, but it's still a pretty entertaining sequel. Again, directed by Tony Scott, may he rest in peace. It's hard for you to remember what the years of films that came out because I believe this was 84, and I'm trying to think what else came out in 84. I want to say The Terminator, I believe, came out in 84. I think Runaway, which I'm a big fan of, that came out in 84, but that didn't do well. I'm sure there's tons of films I love that came out in 84. It's hard to remember the years for me. At least that good. Then you saw this little bit Detroit, a little bit of a grungier, grittier police station, but here is much more finesse, much seems like higher budget, cleaner type of police station. Here we have Judge Reinhold and John Ashton. And that's another reason why this film works. It's not just Eddie Murphy that has to hold it together. He gets great supporting characters from these two. I will say one thing with the sequel is that I think the sequel even works with these characters even better because they really are a team in the sequel, working together, bantering with each other, and I don't know, the more I think about it, maybe I do like the sequel more because the sequel is still really funny. I'm Johnny Wishbone. I'm going deep, deep, deep into Trevor. Yeah, the same with Judge Reinhold, loving guns and that whole character trait. These three, because of this film, there's a bond, and that's a lot of fun to watch. And plus that the action is exemplified. So, yeah, maybe I do like Beverly Hills Cop 2 more. I'll say that. I probably do like it more. See, sometimes it's weird with me. I have to say it out loud and actually talk it out until... okay. There we go. Ronnie Cox is our captain here. But like I said, by this point, he was mainly known for playing nice guys. He was in Deliverance, among others. And that's why when it got to RoboCop and Total Recall, it was a bit of a surprise that, wow, this guy can be a bad guy. Now, when I think of Ronnie Cox, I just think of him as the bad guy from those two movies. When, again, he wasn't usually known for those kind of roles. But I mean, he does a good job here where he's not just the screaming captain. He's not just the captain that, you give me your badge. He's a guy who's actually trying to understand, who's actually trying to be reasonable, and actually tries to help out our lead, and does, sticks up for him in the finale. Like, he's a captain that you can see why people would respect him. So again, it's not typical yelling police captain in an action film. I don't know why I laugh at. I don't think so. Sorry, I wanted to drink some soda, Mountain Dew Code Red. That's the thing, it's hard to do a commentary when it's a film you like, because like, if it's a movie you don't like, then you'll just make fun of everything. Just because I don't like the film, so I don't respect you, so I don't care what the hell I make fun of, because I don't respect you. But here, it's a film I like and I respect, and I'm not just going to be making jokes at its expense, because I actually do like the film. I like Eddie Murphy. I like Lisa Albacher. And that's another interesting thing, is that kind of sad, how do I put it? Again, she was cast as the love interest for Stallone. So when they cast Eddie Murphy, there's the one part of your brain that goes, so wait a minute, they don't think she can be a love interest for Eddie Murphy? Why? Because he's black? And it's like, yeah, that's honestly the case. That's how it was back then. That, like, a white guy or black girl or black guy, white girl can't be love interest. I think that's why they cut some of that stuff out of Commando. Gray, I don't think Commando needed a love interest. That's why I'm fine with it. Same with here. Not every movie needs love. Not every movie leaves a... Not every... They don't always need a love interest. Sometimes it works. Sometimes it's just put in there forcefully, and it's like, nah, this part isn't needed. So, like, the idea I'm fine with, it not being a love story. Well, yeah, a guy and a girl can just be friends. There's nothing wrong with that. I think that makes it more unique and interesting. It's just in the back of my head, I know that's not why they did it. Someone higher up did that because a black guy and a white girl, we can't have them together. Blah, 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 blah. And to them, I would go, fuck you. It's like Mimic. If you remember the film Mimic, it was going to be Mira Sorvino and I think Andre Braugher. If you don't know who that is, this is a guy... What's a film you may have recognized him in? You remember the movie The Mist, and the guy who's talking with Thomas Jane, who wants to go out there, and Thomas Jane warns him, and he's like, well, guess I'll be the fool. He's like, well, I guess I forget the exact line. He says, well, I guess he's been on quite a bit of Andre Braugher. He's a good actor. Would have been interesting to see him in that role. And I believe it was the Weinsteins who said, nah, we can't have a black guy and a white girl together as a husband and wife. Not everything is racist, but there are racist people in Hollywood, and there's racist people. Doesn't mean everybody. That's the thing, it's the pendulum. You can't swing all the way one way or all the way the other. You can't say there's no racism, but you can't say everybody is racist. That's why you keep a balance. There was racism in Hollywood back then as well as today. Doesn't mean every fucking person was, is, were, and am. But anyway, yeah, I do like the it's just the friendship thing. Only because it makes it different. And like I said, a lot of films don't need a love story. There's a lot of films that you could take out the love story, for fuck's sake. Assassins. Is that really a love story? But it seems like they're trying to do like a little bit lovey-dovey between Julianne Moore and Stallone. Maybe like going towards that direction. That wasn't needed. And there's Damon Wayans. A very young, very slim, like, Damon Wayans. Like, holy shit. Of course, would be in Living Color, The Last Boy Scout with Bruce Willis. And interesting enough, in the sequel, you would have a bit role with Chris Rock. And here we have the famous or infamous banana in a tailpipe. Which I know, if you ever saw the TV show Clerks, the cartoon that is, Clerks the animated series, there's an episode where Judge Reinhold plays a judge, and he has a dream where him and Axel Foley are going around stuffing everything with bananas, and they've run out of bananas, and then he wakes up, and that's the nightmare, is that him and Axel Foley ran out of bananas. It's, of course, the anime series deserved a longer stretch. That was actually a pretty fun cartoon. More witty than anything Kevin Smith has done in the past. Fuck. Almost 10 years at this point, honestly. Like, the last good film he did was Clerks 2, but that's just me. Part of me wants to get my phone and look up what films came out in '84. But I mean, hell, you guys have internets, Wikipedia's, 1984 in film, you'll see it all. It's not about me talking about '84's B, do a commentary on this, so. But yeah, Martin Brest, I mean, this is a guy that did Midnight Run, did this film. Seemed like he was going up there and with in places. I forget what year War Games came out, because like I said, Martin Brest was the original director of War Games, and he got fired, and then they brought in John Badham. I cannot remember what year that was, where that happened. I think Martin Brest tells the story about he wasn't sure on doing this film, and there was a coin flip, and he flipped the coin and landed on the side to do this movie. Now, I don't know if that's true or not. That's what he says. I I don't know why he would make it up, so. I mean, granted, with these films, the plots are kind of the least interesting parts, like what the bad guys are doing, like coffee grounds, bonds. It's just a means to an end. Same with the sequel, like, okay, the Robin. It's like, to be honest, we're not seeing these films for the actual plot. We're seeing it for the characters, the comedy, the action, and it's the way the characters interact with the given situation. And it's not just the actual F theme that's great. The whole score of Beverly Hills Cop is fantastic by Harold Faltermeyer. Making fun of the way he drives. But hey, remember we were told that there's no strong ladies in the 80s, right? Lisa Albacher She's not a damsel in distress. She's not. Well, okay. At the end, she. Yeah, at the end, she gets caught, granted. But she doesn't seem like a weak character at all. She's not, oh, I broke a nail, dead weight. Sorry about clearing my throat. And then these two guys being dipshits. How about you take that banana, shove up your ass? Keep the glasses on so you can watch me kicking your ass. See, Judge Reinhold's a good actor. He was in a bit part in Gremlins, and in fact, some of his bit part was cut out, so only a tiny fraction remained. I would say Fast Times at Ridgemont High and these films are what people remember Judge Reinhold the most. He did do. This is weird. It's well, weird is the wrong choice of words, but Judge Reinhold did do an action film where he was an action star, and it was like on a train. It was like a wannabe low budget Under Siege 2 with Judge Reinhold as an action star. I forgot what the hell the movie was called. But yeah, Judge Reinhold tried to be an action star at one point. It's kind of like when Steve Gutenberg tried to be an action star at one point in like Airborne. I mean, it's not good, but it's interesting to see the attempt. I'm okay, he attempted, it was interesting. It's not entirely successful, but it was interesting. And if you're fans of those actors, it's interesting to watch them to see just the attempt. I know the Steve Gutenberg film is called Airborne. I forgot what the Judge Reinhold was. A Hostage Train, maybe? Might have been Hostage Train or something else. I don't know. I think another one, it was like a sequel to something, but it had nothing to do with it. It was like a sequel to a Thomasine Griffith film, but it had nothing to do with the Thomasine Griffith film. I don't know. But yeah, Judge Reinhold, you haven't seen a lot lately, honestly. I can't remember the last time Judge Reinhold was in a film. Same with John Ashton. I know John Ashton, they tried to do a TV series with him and the guy who's the bad guy in Kindergarten Cop. It was like there was a cop show and baseball was involved. I forget what it was called. So I can't remember the names of this stuff. But that was the crux of Axel Foley's character, is him being able to talk himself in and out of situations. Like that was that's the core of the character. That's his strength. It's not the guns and knives and sharp sticks and biceps, it's his mouth. And being able to use his head and be like, I'm going to talk myself out of this situation, I've been found out, and I'm going to convince these people that I am mad at your security. And the fact he's talking so rapid and so concrete and so sure of himself that people just have to believe it. It's like, he can't be lying. You know, there's no way he could be lying. I mean, why would he be lying? There's no way he's lying about this. Like, come on now. And that's what I mean, like, he sees a guy doubting him, and he just attacks him, like the line, just attacks him, mauls him with words, and gets to that he himself it gets rid of his doubts. In fact, he's like, no, I don't know whose Porsche that is. And that's his power. That's his gift of gab. That's what makes Axel Foley him as a cop. See, like, he's like, I don't know whose that is. As a Beverly Hills Cop 2, it took what worked in the first film. It said, okay, we amp up the action, we amp up the intensity, we give the Tony Scott look, which it's a great look. Cinematography of that film is solid. And it's still a funny film, but you also have even more of the friendship between these guys. And I like that. I like the fact that it's not just forgotten. It's not just a square one. It does showcase they've been friends. Even a little bit with the picture where they went on a fishing trip. That's nice that they carry that over. Because a lot of times, sometimes there's sequels that just completely forget that the previous film happened. Oh, now we're back to square one. What? Again, that's another appeal of this movie is that, usually you see it's a buddy cop film, or it's two guys, but the fact it's three people, again, makes it a little bit different, unique. It's a camaraderie of three instead of just two, or the one-man army thing. And don't get me wrong, I love the one-man army movies. I'm a sucker for them. Some of them are my favorite action films is the one-man army. Like Stallone and Commando, Stallone. Well, Stallone and Rambo, which is kind of like Commando. Arnold and Commando. I think Van Damme's one-man army, I would say, is Hard Target. Dolph Lundgren's one-man army, Red Scorpion. Love that film. Steven Seagal's one-man army. Well, he tries to do that in every film he is, so. And back in the day when you did have tits in a movie, including an action film. But see, now this would be deemed sexist. But there are strippers. There are strippers who have a job. There are people who go to strip clubs. Strip clubs do exist, correct? If they still exist, then they can be shot there. So shut the fuck up. Fine, you don't want to do it, I will find a stripper, and she will do the fucking job. Well, I got a computer here I could look up. See if there's any trivia I'm missing. Let me look up Judge Ryan. If I drink club soda, I'll throw up. Sorry I'm being silent, I'm just... Yeah, the Judge Reinhold film I was talking about, there's two titles. Crackerjack 2 or Hostage Train. That's the Judge Reinhold action film. It's not a great film, but again, it's interesting if you want to see something different from Judge Reinhold. Yeah, apparently these three guys, a lot of their dialogue was improvised. Like later on, the Super Cops monologue. That's why John Ashton, when he's like pinching his nose, Just he's trying not to bust out laughing. Let's see. Oh, Nasty Girl, the song at the dance club. There was a film I just saw recently that had that same song. I forgot what the hell it was called now. The first of 7 Eddie Murphy films in a row to open at #1 at the box office. That's how successful Eddie Murphy was in the 80s. The highest grossing R-rated film in the US until The Matrix Reloaded. Without inflation. Okay, yeah, the War Games thing was before this. So he was fired from War Games and then got this job. Yeah, that great. Which now people are like, oh no, you can't do this. I'm like, why? Well, you can't do that. No, yes, I can do it, and shut up. I can do it, I just did it. I'll do it again. But yeah, apparently this was a point where Eddie Murphy was very tired shooting these scenes, and then they gave him coffee, and he never has caffeine or coffee. So this is why when you watch this, you see like he's kind of moving around and maybe not moving, but it seems a little bit extra hyper. And this is Super Cops thing. So this is why like John Ashton, see him rubbing his face because he doesn't want to laugh. And like Judge Reinhold, I think he's got like a hand in his pocket pinching himself because he doesn't want to laugh. They don't want to ruin the take. They're super cops. They should have capes just flying around. Oh, of course, I should mention 84 was the year of Ghostbusters. Because Eddie Murphy was offered a role in Ghostbusters and he said no. And it made sense because, Ghostbusters, it probably would have been a bigger role compared to what Ernie Hudson got, but he still would have been the fourth guy. While here, he's the first on the call sheet. In retrospect, right call because we did 2 good films, Ghostbusters and Beverly Hills Cop. I mean, if Eddie Murphy was doing Ghostbusters, then they probably would have allowed Sylvester Stallone to do what he wanted. He's like, who else do we have? And do I think Stallone could have done Beverly Hills Cop? I don't think so. I think at this time, I mean, it would not have been the same film. It would not have been a comedy. That's the thing. It would have been probably more like Cobra. And I'm like, you know what? I like the way it came out. Because you got Ghostbusters, Beverly Hills Cop, Cobra. Then Eddie Murphy was able to do Golden Child. All films I highly enjoy. All films, some of my favorites of the 80s. And that's what's sad about movies today is that back then, there's no fucking diatribe of political of any way. Color, creed, sex, gender. Well, you think about it, guess what never comes up? The fact that the only time that comes up that he's black is when Eddie Murphy uses it to his advantage to get the hotel room. And that's more for comedy, humor, joke of not because they're white, but because they're uptown snobs, supposedly. And this one, which is pretty funny. That girl fell for the banana in the tailpipe. Should be more natural, brother. It should flow like this. Look, man, I ain't fall for no banana in my tailpipe. See, that's more natural for us. You've been hanging out with this dude too long. See, that's using that in a humorous, funny fashion. That's being funny. If you're going to use it, that's a way of using it well. Not to tell the audience a fucking lecture. Audiences are tired of being lectured on all sides. And that's why a lot of movies today, they lecture you about toxic masculinity. They lecture you about rights of gays or straights or pinks or the fucking yellow submarines, unicorns, furries, whatever the fuck the lectures are about. It's lectures about racism, cops and racism, blacism, tastism, racist against tastes of fucking sodas. Whatever the fuck people are up in arms by the next fucking day. And, it's like, I'm getting tired of it. I know a lot of people are getting fucking tired of it. That's why I don't give a shit about seeing a lot of these movies today. Plus, I think a lot of movies suck. I liked Nobody. I liked Willy's Wonderland. But I don't give a fuck about seeing Black Widow. I don't give a fuck about seeing Space Jam 2. I don't give a fuck about seeing Fast 9. I know I had one person say, oh, you don't review Space Jam New Legacy. I'm like, no one requested it. Probably because they know they don't care about the movie either. I don't blame them. Either movies that suck or movies that lecture you. And suck. That's like 90%, 95% of movies. There are movies that work. Rarely nowadays. But then you look at the 80s, like every week. There'd be a film that was, oh wow, that's a cool movie. Or that's a funny film. Or that's a hit. You look at the Summers. You look at just how crazy you have to have a film like a Beverly Hills Cop and a Ghostbusters and a Terminator. Let's say, I mean, that alone. 3 bona fide classics. What this year could be deemed a bona fide classic? Let's think about it. What movie, like, there's movies you may enjoy. Like, I enjoyed Nobody, but I wouldn't call it a classic. I liked Willy's Wonderland, but I wouldn't call it a classic. Are people going to call Black Widow a classic? People don't call Fast and Furious 9 a classic. Tom and Jerry, Shadow in the Cloud, Coming to America 2. I'm sorry, Kong vs. Godzilla, in my opinion, that will be deemed a classic. You may disagree, but I think that's a film that a couple years people are already forgotten. Unless I remind you. Give it a year or two, don't forget it even more. In my opinion. Sorry about that spiel, but just... This is why I get harsh on movies today, because I knew how it used to be. Even in the 90s, where people give shit about the 90s, I'm like, you look at the 90s of movies. Cliffhanger, Demolition Man, Hard Target, Broken Arrow, Con Air, The Rock, Independence Day, Twister, Mission Impossible, the first one, The Frighteners, From Dusk Till Dawn. Give me a year, I'll give you a shitload of films worth the crap. Monster movies, when the Deep Rising and The Relic and Mimic. Go watch Mimic, go watch... Herpes Simplex-Teen. I think that would be best. Because that would be deemed offensive too. I'm like, why? You can't take a joke? Just is the thing, when they try to do something nowadays, you know it's about a lecture, not just take a joke. That's not the case nowadays. That was the case back then. You do something, it's just a joke. Oh, this weird thing, like, it's not Eddie Murphy. When he throws Jonathan Banks, it looks like Richard Pryor. Or a double for Richard Pryor. I'm like, I never understood how that shot got in there. Because it's obviously not Eddie Murphy. Even you don't even have to freeze frame it. When he's throwing Jonathan Banks over the tray table, it's obviously not Eddie Murphy. Number one, Eddie Murphy can't do this. I don't buy that. Number two, you just shoot it away like a different angle so you don't see the guy's face. For a second, like, where did Richard Pryor? Like the mustache is twice as big, and like the higher Richard Pryor stunt double to double Eddie Murphy. A double for what? To do a throw? Literally this? I can fucking do that. Hey Matt, you stand here, you throw your arms like over here. Okay. The guy's doing all the work. He's throwing himself on the fucking thing. Hey, what do I know? But I guess I should mention I am watching this on the Blu-ray, which is, I believe, an overseas Blu-ray. It had Beverly Hills Cop 1, 2, and 3 on there. It was a collection. I don't think it carries over the features that the DVDs have, though. I don't believe so. I didn't double check before I press play. But it's weird with how Eddie Murphy made so much money for the studio, how poorly some of his films are treated on home media. That's a lot of these guys. I mean, they either come out bare bones or nothing at all. Bloodsport. Huge hit. The Blu-ray you get is the Blu-ray with Time Cop. Not even by itself. Let alone like no special edition, no interviews with the fighters, the choreographer, whatever. But again, this is interesting about Ronnie Cox is that, talk to us. Let us know about this. Like, again, it's very different for a police captain compared to a lot, especially back in the day, where it's like, hey, okay, what do you got, man? Like, I'm not the bad guy. Like, in a film today, if you had a guy doing this, you would find out he was a bad guy, and that was a twist. Sorry, again, I see so many movies and so many action films that I like the little differences and unique touches that a film does that I just know what else thinks about or cares about. Sorry, now I'm trying to think of what else to talk about. And which is the trouble because I got like 40 minutes left of the movie. Well, about without the end credits, like 30 minutes left of the movie. Oh, this old fuck. Is this the man that wrecked the buffet? Yeah. I don't remember this actor's name. Who disabled and unmarked unit Or the banana. Lure target. And Roseword now. His name's not Rosemont Footface. That's right. Is it the German who ruined the buffet at the club? Are you Mr. Clean's dad? Is that who the fuck you are? Like, if you take another step, do you explode in sand? The sands of time? What the fuck? And that was an interesting idea. That it's not Ronnie Cox; it's his superior that's being the dickhead. So yeah, that makes it a little bit different compared to a lot of other stuff. But I was talking about action films. I mean, you look through the decade of the '80s. It's easy why a lot of people would say that's the best time for action films. To me, it's hard to pick between the '80s and '90s because the '90s, whether it be action or horror, they get kind of pushed away because of the '80s. It's like the '80s younger brother, or '80s is the cool brother, and '90s is the brother that people don't notice as much. But like you look at the '90s, you got Total Recall, you got Terminator 2, you got Hard Target, Time Cop, you got Demolition Man, Cliffhanger, you got Out for Justice, Hard to Kill, Marked for Death, Under Siege, you got Die Hard 2, Die Hard with a Vengeance, you got Metro, you got Con Air, you got The Rock, you got Independence Day, you got Bad Boy, you got Twister. I like Volcano, I like From Dusk Till Dawn, which is action and horror. I like Last Boy Scout, Last Man Standing, The Fifth Element, which is action and sci-fi. I like, The Matrix, which was '99. I think there's a lot of great action films of the '90s. Stone Cold, I Come in Peace, Men of War, The Perfect Weapon. Some other Jeff Speakman films. PM Entertainment, like Last Man Standing with Jeff Wincott. Drive with Mark Dacascos. I believe even in the '90s, that's where you got some Jackie Chan, like Rumble in the Bronx, Operation Condor. I'm trying to remember, was Fist of Legend '90? Hard Boiled was '90s with John Woo. Hard Boiled was '92 or so. But I mean, the '80s, yeah. I mean, you had the first three Rambo films, Commando, Predator, Aliens, Beverly Hills Cop 1 and 2, Die Hard, Above the Law, Bloodsport, Tango and Cash, Action Jackson, Remo Williams, and the list goes on and on. Indiana Jones trilogy, 1, 2, and 3. I mean, again, a lot of stuff. The good old days, the good old days. But yeah, I love the '90s as well. I'm a big '90s kid. I love the '80s, but like nowadays, there's so much fucking nostalgia poured about the '80s. It's like I love the '80s, but you're diluting the pool of '80s where you keep bringing it up again and again, and projects that are not the best. So then you dilute the '80s and you make it a fad that people are getting tired of, and then you're hurting it more than helping it. And you want to make these '80s films, but you don't know what makes an '80s film work. Because they do these wannabe '80s films, and then they're winking every 5 seconds. I'm like, that's not an '80s movie then. The '80s movies took it seriously. They told the stories as serious as they could. Maybe some came off funnier as you thought, but then you're not making an '80s movie. You're making a stupid parody that's not that fucking funny and trying hard. It's like, let's say you're watching someone on the ice and they accidentally slip. You may laugh, inappropriate, but you may laugh. Like if you watch a video on YouTube and someone, okay. But then if you see someone going, oh, maybe I will slip. Oh, no, maybe I will slip this time. Uh-oh. Oh, look, I slipped. It's not as funny. It's just annoying. And anyway. Babe, what do I know? But yeah, Lisa Albacher, like I said, was in another film called Leviathan. One of my personal favorites. Love that film to death. Well, I guess, I could talk about Beverly Hills Top 3 because I haven't brought that up. I mean, I have brought up, but not... Beverly Hills Top 3... This was a time when Eddie Murphy... Like I said, his films were not becoming... Like, Boomerang made a little bit of money, but probably not as much as the studio wanted. Distinguished Gentleman, which I liked, that was a bomb. He did a few other films that didn't do well. So, go back to the well... Beverly Hills Cop 3, and there were ideas of... I know briefly there was one idea of Crocodile Dundee meets Axel Foley. That was an idea probably like for 5 minutes, because Paramount, hey, Crocodile Dundee, one of the biggest comedies out there when it came out. I think that was also in '86. And, even the sequel... People forget Crocodile Dundee 2 made $100 million in the U.S. in '88. That's a lot of fucking money. $100 million in the U.S. That's how big Crocodile Dundee 2 was. So, and those movies didn't cost a lot. So, I like both movies. I can watch the third Crocodile Dundee for what it is, but it's not as good as the first two. But I mean, that was for 5 minutes. They thought of that idea. They thought of Axel Foley going overseas to the UK, which I'm sorry, that's not enticing to me. That seems like just a tired, lazy trope of send them overseas to the UK. Like John McClane, send him to Russia. Send him over here. It's like, I recognize that guy too who had the gun to Eddie Murphy's head. I can't remember his name, but that face looks familiar. That guy seemed like the... See if I could get a better look at him. Yeah, the guy on the left with the gun to Eddie Murphy. He looks like the guy, if you put glasses on him, who got stabbed by the little midget girl in Total Recall, who's working with Michael Ironside. That's what it looked like. But, oh, Beverly Hills Cop 3, no wonder I forgot. It went against the first two films. Eddie Murphy wanted to be an action star. He wanted to be like Wesley Snipes. He wanted to be like Passenger 57. Say, hey, I want to be like that type of guy. Axel Foley is older. He's more grown up. He can't be the same wise as he was. So don't make him Axel Foley. Make him not funny. And John Landis, as much as I don't like him as a person, he was the director of that film. He said, I wanted to make him funny, and Eddie Murphy didn't want to be funny. He just did not want to be funny. So that's why John Landis put all this goofy shit with bringing back Serge and the stupid gun that plays music and has 18 fucking setups to it. And all this other crap. A bunch of people fucking singing and dancing at the beginning. That's how Beverly Hills Cop film starts, with a bunch of fucking workers singing and dancing to like the... I forgot what song it was. And you make it feel like a PG-13 film. A lot of goofy slapstick hijinks. Not even slapstick, that's not the right way to put it, but hey, this car keeps getting shot up and falling off, and that's... I mean, what the fuck movie is this? And the amusement park, in retrospect, was a bad idea, because what is really done with the amusement park? I mean, I guess he saves the kids on one ride. He goes around, but there's... I mean, I don't know. Maybe it could have worked, and if Eddie Murphy wanted to be funny, and he had a better director. Because I'm sorry, John Landis was... He directed a couple good films, but I don't think he's... I really don't. Especially not at that time. Not in the days of The Stupids and Blues Brothers 2000. That's the John Landis you were getting at that time. Guy who did The Stupids with Tom Arnold. For fuck's sake. But Beverly Hills Cop 3 wasn't funny. The action scenes were not enticing. Even the score, like they tried to update the score. It didn't work. John Ashton didn't come back. Ronnie Cox didn't come back. Judge Reinhold, he had nothing to do except try to say this ridiculously long spiel about what his job is. That's like the running joke that wasn't funny. Like, Judge Reinhold didn't have much to do. Hector Elizondo was put in there like a wannabe John Ashton, and it didn't work. Sorry. The villains were lame. Like, Steven Berkoff, I liked him as a villain. I liked him in this and Rambo 2. Jürgen Prochnow, Brigitte Nielsen. I remember them from Part 2. Part 3. Nah. Didn't much care about the villains in those. There you go. Nice fast punches. Like that you show Judge... And it's interesting, you know, like Judge Reinhold and Eddie Murphy, like the little buddy team they become. And then John Ashton comes to the field. Same thing happens in Part 2 where they're both in the vehicle smashing all the cop cars as they're chasing the bad guy from after the armed robbery. Again, that's why I like in Part 2 is they give Judge Reinhold's character like a big fascination of guns, and he has a poster of Cobra up and all these fucking guns and shotguns. He shoots the bazooka, blows up the one tanker truck, semi-truck, whatever. Yeah, I think it was like tanker truck or semi-truck, I forget which. But, oh, I was talking about Beverly Hills Cop 3. My mind keeps falling asleep because of that fucking movie. Just, I mean, such a bad idea for, I mean, bad execution. Bad execution of the film. It just seemed like Eddie Murphy's heart was not in it. And that was clear as day. And I hated Vampire in Brooklyn. I think Nutty Professor is fucking overrated. I think it's one of his most overrated films because I just don't see how that's funny. And then the sequel, oh, this giant CGI hamster butt-fucked someone and raped him. Hilarious. Because you get it, you got butt fucked. This is a giant hamster, and that one guy's an asshole. So you got butt fucked on TV. Dwayne. And there's been talks of a Beverly Hills Cop 4. Number one, I don't think it's ever going to happen. I really do not. And number two, I don't want it to happen. Because, like, what can you do with a Beverly Hills Cop film nowadays? Like, let's really think about it. A lot of people don't like cops. Even if that goes away, a lot of people... A lot of movies deal with some political bullshit. Or... Look at Coming to America 2 and what happened. Hey, did you like that guy Coming to America? Well, Leslie Jones spiked his drink and fucked him, and that's why he had a kid without knowing it. Hey, isn't that funny? What's next? A bad guy going to dose Eddie Murphy and rape him? I mean... Or Actor Foley has a daughter, and the daughter is Rebecca Foley. And Rebecca Foley has to help her father. And it's a female Axel Foley, and she has the Detroit Lions jacket. And I mean, they tried to do a TV show. I mean, think about that. We had a TV show that was filmed, at least a pilot episode, with Eddie Murphy in it. And I forget who was the star of it. I forget who was the star. And that never aired. They never aired it. I mean, think about it. You're putting all this money and time to make it a TV show where Eddie Murphy is a recurring guest star. And it's Beverly Hills Cop, the name, and it never fucking was released. And yet you got, you think there's going to be a Beverly Hills Cop 4. And for a while, it was going to be Brett Ratner, because he worked with Eddie Murphy on Tower Heist. And now Brett Ratner, because I guess he's a piece of shit, too. It's not going to have Brett Ratner. Well, you don't try with the guy who did Coming to America 2? No. Please no. That movie's awful enough. Like I said, I don't think Beverly Hills Cop 4 will ever happen. I don't think it will ever be made. I don't see a story that could be interesting enough to even go in that direction. I've said it before, I say it again. Sometimes franchises need to end. Sometimes enough is enough. Sometimes you cannot capture the genie back into the bottle. Sometimes you cannot get the lightning to strike again. I mean, if this was 97, 98, and it's like, hey, we know Beverly Hills Cop 3 wasn't good, we want to try to make another one, okay, I'd be more willing. Not the case nowadays. Very, very rarely does a sequel work. Blade Runner 2049, I loved. But then for every one of those, you have Rambo Last Blood, you have Coming to America 2, you have A Good Day to Die Hard. Yeah, But it's like, these three working together as a team. It's a fun... I don't want to say resolution, but it's a fun build-up of that story. Judge Reinhold got his moments, saving Axel Foley earlier, getting that nice shot on the guy. These guys don't cover for Axel. One, two, three. It's fine. I know that Eddie Murphy at one time said that when he tries to do his action face, the guy he thinks of is Bruce Lee. So like he pulls his gun, his face. He's trying maybe like a little bit like Bruce Lee. And that's the thing. Like when I remember when Dolomite Is My Name came out, and I said, "Oh, this is actually a fun movie. Cool." I'm like, "Is Eddie Murphy back?" But then I'm like, "I don't know. I don't know if he'll be back because that happens a lot where they come out with a decent film and then the next 2 or 3 movies you go, And sadly, that's the reality of it. A lot of these guys are getting older. They can't be in movies forever. As much as you yearn for it, that's not going to be the case. These guys are getting older. Stallone, Schwarzenegger, Van Damme, Dolph, Eddie Murphy. So I'm not just talking about action, but comedy and whatever. They're getting older. Bill Murray. And once they're gone, who do you have? Like, who do you have? Leslie Jones? Kevin Hart? Melissa McCarthy? Dwayne Johnson, who's already tiresome to see? I'm sorry. Dwayne Johnson does not have the best filmography, and Vin Diesel has a worse filmography. Like Dwayne Johnson, you just say, "Hey, I like The Rundown and such," but Skyscraper, no. He's talking. Judge Reinhold was talking about Butch Cassidy, Sundance Kid, and I don't make you pay for this, Billy. I think they had great chemistry with each other. One of the many things why Beverly Hills Cop 3 didn't work. You didn't have that chemistry between Judge Reinhold and John Ashton, because Ashton wasn't there. And, nowadays this would probably be looked at as sort of a mundane action sequence, but it works for what it's supposed to be. It's not supposed to be Michael Bay. It's effective. You're storming the compound and shooting the bad guys, and that was what was good about the sequel, was that it amped up the action with a bit more style. This is more of the down and dirty action, and part two was the more stylistic action, as in the look of the film. And each character gets their moment. Like Ronnie Cox is going to get his moment, helping Axel Foley in a bit, which is nice. But that Beverly Hills Cop 4, I don't think should ever happen. I don't think it will happen, but I'm saying it should never happen. And I think you know, Coming to America 2 might have made money because people were curious about it, because people were, hey, sequel to Coming to America, hey, Eddie Murphy. But it might have made money because people were curious about it, but if there's any final nail on the coffin for Beverly Hills Cop 4, it's Coming to America 2. That's a film where it just, yeah, no sequels to your older films, Eddie. If it's going to be this piece of shit. And I'm not the only one that disliked that film. I'm sure they're patting themselves on the ass. Because if it makes money, that's all that matters. I'm like, no. There's many films that made money that are shit. There you go. Boom. Actual blood squibs. Low explosives that make it look like, they got shot. Even the film, comedy action film, they were able to do that. I mean, movies are so bad today. That's why you have so many people on YouTube reacting to old movies. Like, the first time I see Predator, first time I see blah, blah, blah. I don't know if it's the first time they're seeing it or they're just doing it for views. I don't know, but... part of me can believe it because look at the way the media and just the way everything is nowadays, where you... back then, we didn't have a lot of options. Back then... what's this man doing? Bleeding, sir. But I was saying, back then, you had either cable, VHS, or the movie theater. You had three options. On cable, it wasn't 200 channels back in the day. It was a handful. So, because it was a handful, or you went to a video store, you're able to see almost every film that comes out. Again, whether in the theater or home video. That's not the case anymore because you have all these streaming sites of VOD, because you have countless direct-to-video, like I said, VOD, not only in theaters, like a smorgasbord of entertainment, quote unquote, as well as YouTube, as well as Twitch, as well as assortment of websites and TikTok and all this other stuff, video games of all sorts of, and PC or streaming in some capacity, just all these other choices, that people have, kids have, that a lot of films can't fall in the cracks, especially if they came out 20 years ago. Because they're growing up with phones in their hands, they're growing up with brand new computers. Hey, what's new? There's a new superhero movie, there's a new comic book movie, there's a new this, there's a new that. So they don't, unless they hear it through the grapevine, hey, I heard about this film, let me go see it. Then they watch it on their, Netflix or whatever the hell else. Unlike us, where we grew up in the day where there was no internet. We remember a time when there was no internet, and when we're gone, there will never be someone who's like, I remember a time there was no internet. We're the last of the analog age, if you think about it. We're the last of the analog age, where we remember the old days. Now it's all digital from here on out. And the new people coming into play, they will be born to a world of internet and streaming and all that stuff. Again, getting their phones where they're 10, 12 years old. They get a computer when they're 10 years old. It just, I don't know where I'm going with that, but just something to think about. But again, this is a nice resolution of, not resolution, but it's a nice arc for Ronnie Cox's character, where he's not the typical asshole captain. He's actually a decent, good guy, this captain. He's actually a nice guy. He's actually a respectable man, which is, like I said, rare to see, but it's nice to see. Sorry, now I'm just watching the film as we're getting to the ending here. Sorry, you're not. As I, you don't say something. Yeah, now I'm just invested in watching the film as it ends. But it's a great movie. Likable characters. Wonderful chemistry with each other. Eddie Murphy on point in his prime. Firing on all cylinders. Great soundtrack. Wonderful score. All the elements worked, and that's what made the film rewatchable. A huge hit. A moneymaker. And if they're that big, how the fuck do you fit three of them in your bag? I mean, the one bag looks bigger than your entire bag. And even John Ashton has learned to live a little. Even the idea is nice that they don't have one drink, and then at the end you get to the sequel, they did keep up with each other. They've been on a fishing trip together, like I mentioned before. And yeah, it's nice that there was a life in between the two films. Interesting choice of having red titles for the end credits, not just the typical white. Did a little bit different. Eddie Murphy, Judge Reinhold, John Ashton, James Russo, Jonathan Banks. Stephen Elliott was Chief Hubbard. Oh, that was the old guy. Gilbert Hill, that was Inspector Todd. Damon Wayans is Banana Man. Seeing if there's any other names I recognize. But yeah, absolute classic. I mean, that Beverly Hills Cop TV show, I would be curious to watch it. This is not because I think it would be good, but just curious to see what it is and how bad it was. Like, how bad was this show that it didn't even get aired? Was it Bryden T. Jackson who played Axel Foley's son in it? And yeah, it never got released. And the fact that that never got released, but, again, that's why, many reasons why I don't think Beverly Hills Cop 4 will get made, and nor should it. Nor should it. So, actually, I'll check to see. Nope, there is no special features on this Blu-ray. There was on the DVD, but not on the Blu-ray. Well, actually, no, there's extras. Oh, I was wrong, there is. The phenomenon begins, commentary director Martin Brest, a glimpse inside the casting process, the music of Beverly Hills Cop, location map. So yeah, there is. I don't know if it is on the sequel, though. Yeah, 30-minute phenomenon begins. You got Jared Bruckheimer. You got, I think, the original writer. Let's see, you got Martin Brest. They said you got John Ashton, you got Judge Reinhold. You do have Eddie Murphy, but I don't know if that was for this or it might have been for another thing. Because you have like Eddie Murphy in front of like a green screen, and that might have been for another thing he was doing. If so, I don't know what it is. Because they use very little of Eddie Murphy. That's why I don't think he sat down for this interview. It was from another source. I forget what that source is. Which, I mean, that's another thing. Like, you get these guys like Eddie Murphy that don't want to do interviews about their projects. I think that's a shame. But what do I know? Anyway, with that said, thanks for watching. Take care. And we will see you guys later. Bye-bye.